We are pleased to have in our studio a gentleman that is so great to be with us. Bob Carnagey is with us, and he's currently the local, first, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. It's a joy to be here again.
Currently the local coordinator. You know, you've got so many things, so why don't you just tell us about what the important things are? 'Cause
Sure.
by the time I talk to all the things you are doing and have done, we won't have time to talk about why you're here.
I think
Thanks for coming back, by the way.
It's just a great opportunity, and thank you. I think the most poignant part about some of the things I participate in is the fact that I'm the commander of the DAV Chapter 17 in Hammond. And that services veterans both in Indiana and Illinois because we're one block off of the state line, and so it's easy for both sides to come to our meetings. And the point of our meeting is to get veterans to come to it and understand how they can get help through the DAV to sign up for veteran benefits. And so, excuse me, each meeting has multiple service officers in attendance that help the veteran community start the process of getting connected and reaching out to see what their potential is for achieving veteran benefits. And then we continue to work on multiple projects in the Northwest Indiana area that help veterans or assist veterans that are falling through the cracks. And that's fundamentally what our mission is in life. And the DAV, of course, is built on a local chapter like we are, and then a state organization, and then a national organization. And we are extremely active here in this community. This particular month, as we prepare for Christmas, which can be a challenge for some families, we have families in our membership that don't have the wherewithal to take care of Christmas for their families. We've been able to help some of them. We're contacted by the National Guard in our area that the call I got one day was one of our troops doesn't have the money to put coats and boots on their 5 children. And it was 28 degrees that day. And I said, I think we need to do this
That's meaningful.
today.
That's right.
And so I was able to do some things and went shopping and called the sergeant back and said, "Where are you?" And he had called me in the morning. I said, "Where are you?" I said, "This is where I'm at, and I've got 5 coats and 5 pair of boots in my car for you."
That's great.
And
you were in, if I remember, in Vietnam for 13 months, right?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, and you got a Bronze Star.
I did.
Yeah.
And the your little write up here on Agent Orange is near and dear to my heart. And it behooved me to understand how I, in Saigon, am exposed to Agent Orange because it's a dust. And these guys that are 5 miles off the coast in a ship can't qualify for the same thing. Did the dust stop at the water, or did the dust blow over the water to the ship? And we all know that it blew over the water to the ship.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because we were, Bob, because that failed to pass the Senate.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things.
Navy veterans who might have been exposed, and you just explained why they could have been, it failed to pass the Senate. So hopefully, well, they'll reintroduce it, I hope.
Sure.
But I'm sure, because as you said, they were exposed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when I went to file my claim, the service officer said, "Well, you know, when did you serve and where, et cetera, et cetera."
Sure.
And I told him when I was in Vietnam, and that's when they were spraying Agent Orange. So he said, "We got to apply for that, you know, because what are your illnesses?" And 3 of them that I have directly are on that list. It was a no-brainer. And so I said to him, though, I was never anywhere where they were spraying Agent Orange. He said, "It doesn't matter. You had boots on the ground while that was taking place. It's a powder. It's a dust. It has no barrier." And so that was how it was explained to me when I had no clue. And so how that can't be consistent to help these folks that were in the Navy just begs reality. I mean, they were exposed in exactly the same manner. So let's get the Senate woke
Yeah,
up
yeah, I
and,
think,
and,
yeah.
and understand
Right.
what's going on. And I'll tell you something else I learned. In the last election, which just took place 2 months ago, there were over 150 veterans that ran for office.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
I didn't know that.
Yes, sir. And that was a tidbit I picked up in listening to the TV that night when the results were coming in.
In the last election, 150.
Yes, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Because that's something we've been missing in this country for multiple years. And we need to get these folks who have had successful careers in the military and understand the plight of the veteran to get involved with making the laws of this country. And the other thing that I feel very strongly about, if we look back at our history and look at what happened after World War I, what happened after World War II, this country rode the backs of those veterans to grow and flourish and recover from terrible events that took place to this country, and we did it on the back of the veteran community. And it happened a bit after Vietnam. It wasn't the same kind of a war. It happened a bit after Korea. Again, not the same. But this long term that's happening in the Middle East, there's going to be millions of people that have served over there eventually.
Yeah.
And that generation needs to step up and take their place in the veteran community and take their place in the public eye of this country.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. Dr. Arnold?
Yes,
Yeah.
You know, and it's really interesting. I mean,
Yeah, I know
many of
you
the
would think.
comments that-
Go right ahead.
Yeah, many comments that he made were really interesting because, you know, as far as the sailors are concerned, you know, it's not just the area where you apply the Agent Orange, but the equipment that gets contaminated as well. So anyone transporting equipment, coming in contact with equipment, coming in contact potentially with body bags, anyone who would be exposed to that agent, because the agent doesn't just dissolve, it doesn't just dissipate. It, you know, stay on top of things. That's because it's a defoliating agent. That's why it's stuck on the trees and took the leaves off the trees, you know, so that you have more a possibility of seeing things through the field. That's what the purpose of it was.
And the interesting thing is you don't have to be real bright, Doc, to understand why they were using it anyway. It was to kill all of the foliage. I mean, anything that's going to do that.
I have Doctor, one of my friends from the DAV told me his story where he was in the Air Force and he didn't think he was in a situation that put him in harm's way. And now, years later, he finds out that his exposure to Agent Orange has caused several things to happen to his body. And he then would reflect that they would go to the Tonson Air Base to pick up packages and things like that. And timeliness wasn't always the air carrier's forte during those times, so they'd have to wait. And he said we'd be at the end of the runway, maybe an hour or two to kill. We'd look around and we were sitting in brown grass.
Wow.
And he'd say,
brown grass.
how can this, look over on the other side of that fence, it's a jungle, and we're sitting in brown grass. And they said, we had no idea how that could possibly happen. We know now.
That's right.
What bothers me the most is this just reminds me of my tenure when I worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And when we first started getting the claims for the Agent Orange and how we just stacked those claims up and they just grew and they just grew from claims because they had not yet completed their studies and everything. And this did not get settled until a great number of them had died from all of those illnesses. And then all of a sudden the studies start coming up to be positive for all of the ailments that these veterans were dying of. So you would think in this time that we would have learned other things and how to actually produce a very fair process to help our veterans, but it does not seem like that is happening.
Well, I think for a while it did, but it stopped. It stopped when they got to this particular problem, hoping they could keep it kind of in a cage.
Yeah, but these are still
that's
same
it.
This points out
veterans.
that, and this points out the point that, you know, for people who are still in the military now and those commanders who are out there,
Sure does.
you know, to be respectful of their unit members and the people who are serving under them, make sure that the line of duty statements are filled out properly, make sure the medical forms are filled out properly when they come back in from combat duty. And then also the people, you know, I'm a physician myself, so
Right.
I've gone to the VA where I've sat down and spoken to people who were supposed to be evaluating, who were, more on the federal level, that were doing, disability evaluations, and they never touched me, never asked me the right questions, because I know the questions should be, I'm a physician, and they did not know I was a physician,
Right.
and they just passed it through, and I
Surprise,
sat there going, like,
right? Yeah.
right. So we have to have some culpability, and some of these are not veterans themselves. These are people who are being hired as independent contractors, to have them be brought up to speed on what a proper exam is and what a competent physician should be doing.
Excellent point.
I can only
Yeah.
echo that. In some of the experiences I went through, I was called to see a specialist for some things that I had going on by the VA to make sure that what my claim was accurate. And in walked Doogie Howser. It was a guy, I don't know how old he was, but he certainly wasn't old enough to be a doctor. And he asked me 20 questions, and he only had the ability to read them. He certainly didn't know anything else other than read
Did he
these
tell you to
questions.
count backwards?
No, he didn't.
That's one of the signatures of the examination, count backwards, really?
But you know what? I think that they should have a law. You think back to the atomic bomb, 1945, and the testing of that, and people not knowing, just viewing it, the testing of the bomb, and that they were exposed to radiation and the harm it could be done, or Agent Orange. We didn't know, I was there too. And I remember coming upon fields sometimes, and it looked like somebody had cut the grass or something, because there was new grass sprouting. And I said, I wonder why there's nobody out here with a lawnmower. But you could see the old grass and then the new grass trying to grow because it had been killed by Agent Orange, I guess. But you didn't know about it. Now, there's soldiers in harm's way. There could be other chemicals and things that they're being exposed to that they've hidden from these soldiers.
Sure.
Yeah.
There should be something to let soldiers know, or soldiers, whomever in the military, they're being exposed to something that could be harmful to them. Well, and there should be some type of law to say, you have to let people know what they're getting into.
Yeah,
We had no idea.
Being exposed, as you say, Counselor, being exposed to things such as the Commander-in-Chief.
Yeah, but you had no idea. I didn't know anything about Agent Orange when I was there.
Sure. We never did.
No.
But think about this, and Doctor, I'd like you to comment on this. Think about when we started in the Middle East with Saddam Hussein, and those those fires that were started in the oil rigs and things like that, and that black smoke billowing all over the place. What the heck was in that smoke?
Exactly.
Well, that's exactly. Those are petroleum-based compounds, and many of them are already known to be things that are cancer-causing agents. Those are well established. If you go into any kind of occupational medicine directory, you'll find those names of those chemicals in there. Not only that, but a lot of people, I take exception with people when they say, well, there were no weapons of mass destruction over there. Bull crap. He was using chemical agents against his own people.
Right.
Syria was a good example where they had weapons of mass destruction. Those are, chemical agents. We're not sure if they even had biological agents they were releasing. We're not even sure if they even had some kind of dirty bombs with nuclear exposure. Sure. But they had burn pits throughout those environments. They were blowing the smoke into our encampment areas, into our FOBs. And so who knows what you were really exposed to in the dust, the particulate matter that was in the air all the time. Yeah. You can't tell me that we weren't exposed to certain things that were in the air in that region. Sure. You're starting to see more papers come out in the scientific literature that's saying that these exposures did occur, and that there are people who do have lung involvement because of that.
Sure. Yeah.
It seems like it goes to anytime we have any kind of advancement in technology and experiments in warfare, even in building construction, for example. When we had the World Trade Center collapse, we had first responders who were getting sick from the residue that was in the building materials. But the thing is so tragic is that the one thing I don't understand, when you join the military and you do what you're supposed to do in the military to come out, you have to fight to get your benefits. It's always a struggle and a battle to get your benefits, and that leads to groups like yours, the DAV, where we need groups like yours in order to get benefits, to figure out how to navigate the system.
Let's take a caller. Jay, hi, you're on WVON, America's Heroes Group.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I just want to say,
Sure, Jay.
being in the military in general exposes you to eye-opening things, danger. It's some people that just can't even take boot camp, and even after they pass boot camp, they can't even get past that. I had to help somebody get out the Navy, a white girl. She couldn't handle it. It was too overwhelming for her. I understood that. I've seen black men couldn't even open their mouth when they got to the ship, you know, and they see how everything is close quarters, you know, and then if you get hurt, and you can get hurt, you don't have to be in a war. I got hurt.
Right? That's true. You're right.
I'm just saying, you got to understand, being in the military is eye-opening. Not only is it eye-opening, it exposes you to a lot of things that you don't forget, whether you get hurt or not. It changes your thinking. It changes your person.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to say that. You
Well,
don't have to be
Jay,
involved
I think all of us would agree with that. It certainly, we just hope that in most instances, Jay, the change is a positive one. You know, but in situations,
It could be part. You
Yeah.
got to be close to your family. And
Yeah.
and if you're not close to your family, and that's one.
yeah, I got you. All right, thank you for your
you
call,
know,
Jay.
but that's, you know, I was a platoon sergeant for 3 cycles of basic training. And part of your job, though, is to take and this is after I returned from Vietnam, but and I was at Fort Dix, and part of your job is to convert that person from civilian mentality into a military mentality, because they're going, that 1969, they were on their way to Vietnam.
Right.
And so you couldn't take a civilian and put him in, you had to have that type of training that changes your mentality, and that's
that's
necessary,
what basic is
though.
about.
And
Yeah.
that's it, basic AIT.
Advanced
You know,
Intermediate,
and
whatever.
you have to do that, though, in order to put a person in harm's way, to take orders, to do whatever, to fight a war, because you can't take a civilian and put him in combat.
That's why a lot of them don't make it through.
Yeah.
There was a study
Well,
done.
I'm not sure of that, Consular. The streets in Chicago.
But you know what? You put some of those in a real situation,
Yeah,
they won't be so
That's true.
brave,
That's right.
you know.
That's
Some of
right.
those
No,
I
punks
agree
out
with
there.
that, but I'm
some of
talking
those,
about
yeah,
the
I
fact
know.
that all the shootings we got
right.
going on. But you're right. That'd be a
Take
whole.
some of those punks and you
Yeah.
put them in a real situation,
To-
see how brave they are.
To support your statement about training,
Right.
I read an article. The study was done after the Civil War, and they found weapons on the fighting area that were loaded, hadn't been fired. And they went through to figure it out, and these were some military soldiers that couldn't pull the trigger.
Wow.
And so, even though they were in harm's way, and so one of the things that the Army did was said, now we've got to do just exactly what you said. Take that civilian and turn him into a different person than what he came in.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from Bob's experience, I fired a .22 one time at a sporting goods show before I got into basic training. So they had a lot of work to do with me. I'm saying that right now.
But you know, when you look at the mentality, for instance, when you think of kamikaze pilots, you know, I mean, they knew.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
And we used to have that story about they're on the carrier deck, and the gentleman is telling them, their commander, how it's going to be great to die for the land of the rising sun and the emperor. And one lieutenant raises his hand, and commander says, "Yes, your question. Will you be leading the raid?" He said, "Are you out your effing mind?" But those folks did that. So that's it. Yeah. Anyway,
Cliff, I've got
go right
something
ahead.
for you.
Yeah, please.
A couple things that we're going to do this year in 2019.
Great.
The first thing is really not open to the public, but it's FYI so you know. On February 11th, several of the veteran groups in Northwest Indiana are going to go to Indianapolis and visit at the State House so that the state politicians can see the power of the veteran community in Indiana. And there are some agenda items that come up every year that have a direct impact on us. And so when they can see the numbers of people that are concerned about these issues, maybe they'll think twice. The second thing that we do as a chapter here in Northwest Indiana, we have a walk That walk will be Saturday, the 18th of May at Wicker Park in Highland, Indiana, and we bring veterans and family members and things like that to call attention to what our activities are in Northwest Indiana. And the last thing that I'll bring up is on June 1st, and we'll talk about this afterwards, but there is a triathlon in Wolf Lake.
You're doing all
Okay.
right. Yeah.
And that triathlon is put on by, well, it's called Leon's Triathlon. It's been going on for a long time, but it has morphed. It's a short triathlon compared to the ones we know about and see in Hawaii and places like that. But there are a large number of disabled veterans that participate in that.
That's beautiful.
And have a partner swimming with them. They're running their wheelchairs while people are running, and handicapped of all sorts. And it's growing and growing in the veteran community to participate in this, to realize just because you have a severe wound, your life doesn't stop.
That's right.
And now it's expanded to police and fire departments. And the handicap part of this is getting bigger and bigger. And so when we're done today, I'll talk to you about this, and
Oh,
maybe we
yeah.
can get Leon in here sometime for you.
That'd be great.
He's a second generation running this, and he's a different person, but he has enthusiasm like you just can't believe.
That's wonderful.
Wow.
That's it. You're doing a fantastic job out there. That's just great.
Any questions or concerns regarding affordable housing, social service, wellness care, please feel free to call America's Heroes Group at 312-803-2618. We're located at 155 North Wacker Drive, Suite 4250. We thank you for watching us on Facebook Live. Make sure you hit the Facebook like button at the top of our Facebook page. Therefore, you stay connected and will receive future notifications regarding shows, events, information regarding our veterans, armed forces, and their family members. We're so grateful to our partner, Miss Dorothy Lavelle of the Chicago Crusaders. And you can read the Chicago Crusader articles on veterans, armed forces, and their family members online at www.chicagocrusader.com. To subscribe to the Chicago Crusaders weekly column, Voices with Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, call Chicago Crusader at 773-752-2500 or send an email to ads@chicagocrusader.com to request a subscription.
And thanks to our technical producer, Isaac Taylor.
Isaac.
Yeah, Isaac, thanks so much.
Hey.
Everybody.
Have a blessed weekend, America's Heroes Group.